This was a small snippet of the conversation that occurred between streamer Co-Carnage and Chris Joppa Perkins in the February 2020 developer stream of Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, the upcoming MMORPG by Visionary Realms. Joppa is the creative director for the game, and his response encapsulates one of the aspects of Pantheon that I find most enticing. That is to say, the detail, the depth, and the dimensions his vision represents in the game's development. In my mind, design without this kind of vision limits MMOs to being games, not worlds. But what does that have to do with this video? Well, when the conversation occurred, Ko is looking at this image. What are we looking at here exactly? How does it fit into the lore of Pantheon, as Joppa suggests there is a lot to know about it? So let's take a trip down the rabbit hole and try to speculate on what Joppa was referring to in his response. As you would expect, this one will be heavy on the lore theory crafting, so keep that in mind and allow me to wander through the realms and times of Terminus. Let's start with what we see. A celestial body, possibly, coursing through the atmosphere, perhaps crashing. A planet, a meteor, or a star of some sort. Note the dark surface with what appears to be fiery undercurrents, suggesting a subterranean power. Shards and pieces of the object possibly drifting across the atmosphere. The vibrant energy trails streaming behind it, almost appearing as a clawed forearm losing its grip on an object. Like clouds in the sky, one could perceive numerous things, but what if there were some lore hints to bring these to ground? Let me suggest to you there may just be. The first thing to consider is where the scene takes place. It's on the Isle of Infinite Storm, an area not explicitly noted on the world map of Terminus, nor appearing to be bound by any landmass from within. An otherworldly pocket dimension, or bubble in space and time, perhaps. An area of extreme climate, where a mystical magical degree of protection is needed from the storm that never ends. And lastly, the realm of Sleepless, a powerful entity of mysterious origin. Now, consider the common thread amongst these observations. It is a place where time has no meaning. Sleepless requires no rest, if its name reflects its existence. The storms are infinite, and it's an island, one that perchance exists outside of Terminus's timeline. Joppa notes when looking at the object in the sky that, in fact, the storyline we didn't finish earlier actually will give you some good insight into some of that information. So let's examine that storyline. In the conversation with the Old One that was on display earlier in the developer stream, we find several threads of information. This mysterious figure doesn't reveal his true identity, but rather states in response the question, "If you're after my name, I no longer have one. In this world, we are known simply as Old Ones. We once existed in the natural world as you do, though I have trouble remembering that far back." When pressed for his true age, he adds, "Old enough to remember the moment when time stopped and the world was split in two." This revelation is new to the Pantheon lore, or at least stated in such an explicit manner. Ko's character reacts accordingly in response. He states, "But time hasn't stopped." Fortunately, we are given more detail by the Old One to assist. He states, "You're right. Time carries on for you in your world, but very little changes in mine. I'm the same as I've always remembered myself to be, free to move, but always returning here." So we've established that there are at least two distinct timelines in existence, one which we are aware of, and another in which time has ceased where the Old One now exists. So when we step back and consider this against the earlier observations, it raises some interesting questions. Again, time is the common denominator here. The Isle of Infinite Storm does not appear to be part of this natural world the Old One mentions. Is this the realm he now inhabits? If that is the case, it could follow that what we see there is a snapshot of the moment in time when the world was split in two. A glimpse into the past, if you will. But how far in the past? And when did time stop and split? A scrap of insight into this question may come when Jimmy Lane, world builder for the game, refers to the floating platforms as Remnant shards. In the Pantheon lore, the Remnant were created when Janavi sacrificed herself to imbue the few remaining undefiled Ginto with her power, transforming them into a second new race, immune to the effects of the Ravaging Lord and his Revenant. These are known as the Remnant, zealous, pious warriors of exceptional abilities, with an unyielding appetite to exterminate the Revenant. So why would these platforms be called Remnant shards? Perhaps the Remnant created this bridge to the Isle of Infinite Storm to allow them, or others, to fight Sleepless. Which raises the question, is Sleepless an incarnation of the Ravaging Lord? But the Ravaging Lord was defeated in 485 IH, as noted in the lore. This was the Dragon King Roknilthamos. In a flash, his monstrous head pierced the clouds of storm and ash. He crushed the Ravaging Lord in his mouth, but gently enough to flip his pierced body into the air, incinerating it with a blast of molten flame. Perhaps just prior to this is the moment the timeline split, creating the Isle of Infinite Storm and allowing the Ravaging Lord to persist here. Or just maybe the Old One is a remnant warrior, always returning here to shepherd adventurers to fight with his ancient foe. What is revealed about the creature Sleepless, however? This fearsome entity speaks in the developer's dream, stating, "Foolish, you seek shelter, but there is none. Yes, I will make known the power of this place, worthless creature. You will behold all of it. Come, go, enter my living nightmare. You have accomplished nothing. Now I will scatter you like grains of sand. Behold, the infinite storm." Sleepless's words invoke images of a being trapped in time, an unrelenting fury seeking to prove the power of his realm is absolute, or undeniable, as the Old One put it. Continuing to review the Old One's dialogue, he notes the sightstones we see sitting atop a pedestal beside him. He asks, "I presume you touched this mystical stone?" To which Ko's character replies, "Yes, I felt it draw me." The Old One ponders, "Beckoned by a sightstone, you say? Interesting indeed. On rare occasions, sightstones have been known to grant an incredible gift, the ability for a mortal creature to see beyond the natural world into another. This explains why I have appeared before you, though the veil between our worlds may cause me to appear as a spirit of some kind. The sightstone is perhaps a conduit or a link between the worlds. Note the appearance of the sightstone, and now again consider the object in the sky in the Isle of Infinite Storm. Certainly, there are commonalities. The texture, the molten striations. Is this a fragment of that celestial body? The Old One provides a couple more details about sightstones as well. He states, "But sightstones are not chosen by adventurers like weapons to be wielded or relics to be worn. It is the sightstone itself that chooses. I've seen no magic that can force their power or break them open against their will. If it is a piece of the sphere we see in the Isle of Infinite Storm, then perhaps we have another clue as to when time stopped." Sometimes the most telling clues can hide in plain sight. Consider this piece of general lore from the front page of PantheonMMO.com, which states, "Pantheon Rise of the Fallen takes place on the high fantasy world of Terminus, a wildly diverse land formed from fragments of many different realms and times, bringing with them their unique civilizations and deities." Different times. We're well aware that Terminus is a place where 9 different races from various realms have come to inhabit from what are known as collisions. But the idea of different times has largely gone unnoticed, yet bears relevance here. What if the scene from the Isle of Infinite Storm is one of those times? A moment just prior to one of the race's homeworld colliding with Terminus. It may be that this is when things ceased, creating a moment frozen in time, and the fragments of the object provide a conduit to that moment. As the Old One's dialogue concludes, time is undeniable, especially when it has stopped. So let's summarize what's been postulated here. The Isle of Infinite Storm is a temporal space which was created in 485 IH. It exists independently of Terminus' timeline. At the moment it was created, a heavenly body was coursing through the sky with fragments falling to Terminus. These would become known as sightstones, and now provide a link between the timelines for mortals of Terminus. Within the Isle of Infinite Storm timeline, the Remnant created the means for mortals to continue to battle the Ravaging Lord, while in the known timeline, the Deicide War ended in 485 IH. I know this one requires a lot of suspension of disbelief, so thanks for sticking to the video to the very end. For me, this is what makes Pantheon so interesting. Every detail has a story, or at least a reason behind it. I make no claim to know these reasons, but will never shy away from allowing it to live in our collective imaginations. But what do you think? How important is detailed lore like this in an MMO to you? Let me know in the comments below, or come chat with us on the Pantheon Plus Discord server. I'll leave a link in the description. And until then, cheers, and thanks for watching.